You know I'm right, the podcast that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in media, sports, entertainment, journalism, and so much more. Nick Durst here, along with Joe Calabrese and Joe. Going to be an interesting episode here today. We're going to be tackling a specific topic. We have one of our returning guests on with us here to start things off, and then we'll have a new guest in the back half of this podcast. So stick around till the end.
Yes, absolutely. So we don't necessarily talk about mental health that much. It does come up periodically, but this is one of the first true episodes that we're going to have that kind of really fully breaks it down. And yes, our guest today, she is now a part of the exclusive two-time club, which is an incredible list. It's a growing list, incredible list nonetheless. She is a journalist. She is now a two-time author. Her next book, Mindfire, Diary of an Anxious 20-something, that comes out just a couple of months from the time that we're recording this. So we're very, very happy to have her on. We welcome back Carrie Berk to the show. Carrie, how you doing?
Hi, I'm excited to be back.
Welcome back, and we'll talk more about the book. And as you're watching this out there or listening, the book is out now. So, Carrie, I'll let you know where to go get that. So, curious, I mean, there's a lot going on in your life. You're plugged in, you have to be for your role, your work in journalism. So, what's the first app you are checking in the morning when you check your phone?
Ooh, probably my email, the email app to see if there's anything important I should be responding to right away.
Spoken like a true journalist makes sense. Surprised more people don't say that, but we have had a few guests in a row now saying that. And what would you say is the most off the wall, strange app you have on your phone?
Strange app. I don't use many apps. I think the most unique app I use is called Belly, and I rank different restaurants I go to.
Pretty
Mm.
good.
Like that
All right.
one.
Have you been to anything really wowed you recently in the restaurant world?
Oh, yes. In New York City, there's this place called Jeju Noodle Bar, and it's really hard to get a reservation. I
Hmm.
think the reservations are about 3 months out right now, but
Wow.
it is so good. If you're in New York, you've got to go.
Where is the location of the restaurant?
It's somewhere downtown. I want to say it's in Soho.
Okay.
Joe,
It's
you should
delicious.
recommend your
That's
that good
right.
Italian restaurant you got right down there in Little
That's right.
Oak.
My
It's so
father,
good.
he lives in Chinatown, but he lives right by Mulberry Street. So we know all the restaurants and the Italian and the Chinese restaurants down there quite well. So that's why I asked, because I figured if it's in Soho, if it's a little closer to the east side, it's not too far from him.
Have you ever been to Carbone? If you like Italian
I
restaurants?
have I have been to Carbone.
I've
It's a
heard
very
great things.
very popular among the ladies who like to share Instagram stories about Carbone. We
Yes,
all do
I'm
something
very happy to
similar.
go there.
Right.
It's really hard to get a reservation there too.
That's what I've heard. It's a long wait list, but I guess if you got your connections like you and Joe do, you can make it happen. But it's a big meal, and then obviously you got to work that off. I know you are a big runner. You just ran
Yes.
the New York City Half Marathon. Congrats on that. So tell us, why'd you start running? How does running help you with your mental health when you're
Yep.
out there on the path?
So running is a huge help for my mental health. I started running because in 2020, I was the class of 2020. I didn't have a prom or a graduation or anything like that, so I really felt lost, and I turned to running because it made me feel whole again. It grounded me back to reality and kind of gave me a sense of peace when the world around us was so chaotic. And I really just fell in love with the feeling of staying out there on the road for hours and just clearing my brain and not thinking about anything else that was going on at home. So it really just became something meditative for me. And as I've kind of dealt with my mental health struggles over the years, it's maintained that space in my life.
So you're no stranger to writing a book, as we've mentioned. So let's talk about Mindfire here for a second. What was particular inspiration for writing this book this time around? And let's talk about, I guess, some of the best practices, right?
Mhm.
Some mindful tips that you use and incorporate into your book
Mhm.
for your target audience.
Yeah, so I guess first off, I started writing the book in 2020, as I mentioned, I was class of 2020. I was really struggling, as was the rest of Gen Z, my generation. And I turned to writing to again bring me a sense of peace. I wasn't really comfortable opening up to the public yet about my mental health because it still is so taboo, and you don't really see a lot of people out there sharing their authentic struggles with anxiety or OCD or any of these other mental health issues. And I really kind of wanted to fill that space. But back then, I wasn't ready to do that yet because I was still going through my own healing process, going through therapy. But a few years later, I kind of turned this corner where I wasn't fully, in air quotes, like healed yet. But I knew that you didn't necessarily have to be like cured to speak out. You're not necessarily looking to be healed. When it comes to anxiety, the goal is to just build a toolkit of tools you can use when your anxiety arises. It's not necessarily going to go away. You just get stronger and are able to cope with it a little bit better. So that's really what Mindfire does. It's a roadmap for anyone who's suffering with their mental health. And I'm not telling people that their anxiety is not true or it is true, or I'm not trying to disprove anyone's intrusive thoughts or anything like that. I'm really just trying to create a space where people can read and be able to relate in a way that they might not necessarily be able to relate to a therapist or all the data that's out there. There's something different in hearing from somebody who's actively going through it and has her own coping strategies.
So let's talk a little further in the best ways to cope with anxiety because, so for me personally, I tend to study spirituality, the occult type of stuff, right? So one, I guess, concept that comes up is, the body was meant to move, right? Your mind is meant to
Yeah.
move, your body is meant to move, you're meant to flow, right? So,
Mhm.
physical activities, and it could be something that you do as a runner. It could be, going to the gym or taking care of physical fitness and all that, right?
Mhm.
So, outside of, let's say, just the physical activity that comes with the running, right? You talk about meditation a little bit.
Mhm.
What other ways have you noticed that best work for you that you help you cope with your anxiety? And when you were, I guess, doing some research for the book,
Yeah.
what ways have you noticed, like your generation, that's probably slightly than Nick and I, what ways do you notice that they're kind of coping with anxiety?
I love what you mentioned about allowing the mind and the body to flow freely. I think that's huge, and that's something I keep in my toolkit. Just being able to separate thought from feeling and recognize that these intrusive thoughts you might be having related to your anxiety are because you have an anxiety disorder. It's not because they're true or because they're actually something you should be worried about. So, really, just thinking of it as a thought and nothing more than that, and allowing it to flow freely and separating that from any emotions attached to it, like fear, loneliness, restlessness, I think is important because once we detach those emotions from it, we look at it as a thought, and a thought is a thought. A thought doesn't necessarily hold truth. We can think to ourselves, the sky is purple, and that's not necessarily a true thought. So that's something I think huge that you mentioned that's important. Also, just practicing using your five senses to ground yourself back to reality. I'm not huge on meditation, but I love using my five senses when I'm in an anxious moment. So, naming five things you see, you hear, you smell around you can really just help you bring yourself back to reality. And then also, just I think showing yourself grace. As I mentioned before, anxiety isn't something you're necessarily running towards a finish line towards. Like anxiety is something that ebbs and flows. It's something that's gonna be really bad one day and then a little bit better the next day. So I think just practicing patience and showing yourself grace in those moments and just reminding yourself that there's no finish line you're running towards. This is something that everyone kind of deals with in their own way, and you just have to learn how to be patient with yourself and practice some of these skills when your anxiety arises.
So a lot of people they take to music to kind of
Mhm.
block out the anxiety. So curious for you if you're in a state where you're looking to kind of calm down or escape your mind racing, who's your go-to artist to listen to, whether
Oh.
it's on Spotify, Apple, or the radio?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm such a Gen Z girl. I listen to all the other Gen Z girls. So Olivia Rodrigo, Tate McRae. I love Alec Benjamin. I think his music is beautiful and it helped me a lot during that time that I was struggling in 2020. But then on the other side of the spectrum, I take Peloton classes every day, and my favorite Peloton class I take is a classic rock ride. So I also love Guns N' Roses and Pink Floyd and kind of all those older artists too.
Very nice, wide array of talent there. So that's great. Now, if you missed our first interview with Carrie, go back in our archives, full details on her career and everything. So she is in journalism beyond writing books. She writes articles for different platforms, does some video interviews as well. So if you had the chance to interview somebody, whether it's a celebrity or an athlete or someone of note, uh,
Hmm.
who would that be and why?
My gosh. Surprisingly, I've never been asked this question. Someone, I'm thinking out loud as I'm thinking through it,
Mhm.
someone who has an important story to tell, because that's my goal as a journalist. I love telling my own stories in my books, like my real life rom-com, which was my previous book, and then my new book, Mindfire, because I think I do have important stories to tell, but my ultimate goal is to tell other people's stories and people who might not necessarily are having their voices heard. So I don't know, maybe that's the answer. Just an everyday person with an important story to tell. It doesn't necessarily have to be a celebrity, but someone who's going through something and who doesn't have the platform to share what they're going through and raise awareness. I think that's probably the most rewarding interview subject for me.
Now, if you could pal around with a celebrity, who would it be?
Pal around with a
It's a
celebrity.
different question entirely.
Olivia Rodrigo.
There you go. There you go.
I guess, yeah, the 22-year-old girl in me would also love to interview Olivia Rodrigo.
You know
Good
what?
interview.
I was a pop punk kid growing up, and I kind of still rock out to Avril, at
I
times,
love
and
it.
I kind of see some resemblance in the Olivia Rodrigo music,
Yeah,
with Avril Lavigne. So that's something that I could personally relate to when it comes to you and your music tastes.
I
Uh,
love it.
but we've had you on twice now, so there are a couple of publications that you write for and you tend to do content for. Nick and I have already made appearances, on other networks and stuff, and we've made an appearance on their YouTube channel. So, how do you feel about having I'm right in studio with you? We'll do something for the New York Post. We'll figure out a way to collaborate. Maybe we'll reach out to Olivia Rodrigo and we can have her in the studio as well. But what the idea of like us doing something, the three of us at least in person, how do you like that idea?
Yeah, hopefully we get to meet soon. I feel like after doing two interviews, we have to meet up in person at some point.
Yeah,
Well,
Joe's gonna make the reservations for Carbone, maybe.
Yes,
yeah, we're
I'm
gonna have to be
so
waiting
in.
for months to that. But I mean, like I said, my father lives in the city, so I tend to be in Manhattan at least once a week, if not twice a week, if needed.
Awesome.
So that's something that we could work to down the line. But Carrie, we appreciate your time. Thank you for reaching out to us again. Once your book, Mindfire, comes out, I believe sometime in May. I saw you could pre-order it now. You go to Barnes and Noble and you can go to Amazon. So check that out. You know how this works. You were a guest on here once before. What we do here is we always give our guests the last words. So if there's anything else you would personally like to share, or promote for yourself. We know you have a lot going on, so by all means, go ahead. And thank you for joining us to talk briefly about mental health because again, it is important.
Yeah.
It's something that I've struggled with a lot in my life, and they say it gets easier. Sometimes it doesn't for people. Sometimes people kind of just have stuff piling on as they get older, and with that, Nick became a father last year. I think the first time we had you on was before he was a father, so he's got to go through that and his wife, his own regard. But again, we thank you for your time and, the floor is yours for last words.
Yeah, thank you both for having me. And I love what you said about how it doesn't necessarily get easier, but I think you get stronger, and the more that you actually dedicate yourself to reaching your higher self and bettering your mental health, the better it will be. And that's really what I'm trying to achieve through this book. This is, like I said, a guide for anyone who is just looking for some more guidance, or even just looking for a friend or someone to relate to. Because sometimes all it takes is knowing that there's one other person out there who's going through the same thing as you that really gives you a turning point in your journey. So if that's you and if you want to kind of read more and if you want to learn more about your mental health journey and feel like you're a little less alone in this world, you can get Mindfire. I think by the time this comes out, it'll be out
Hmm.
May
Yeah,
13th.
Yep.
absolutely.
Mindfire Diary of an Anxious 20-something. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. And you could also find me on social media at Carrie Berk with an extra K at the end.
Carrie, thank you for your time, everybody. Go out now and get that amazing book. You are not going to regret it. Carrie Berk, ladies and gentlemen. Carrie, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We now welcome in our second guest here, who also has a kind of similar story, Joe, as far as Carrie, as to how it kind of turned a hobby into a career, as something that was, helping him mentally with his health during some rough times. But welcome him in now. Joe, I'll let you introduce him, but his
Yes.
hat is awful.
No, his hat
I
is great.
almost
Your
want to
hat,
I almost want to
listen,
turn him off for the show.
I, I,
The show.
um, obviously I missed the hat memo. If I was wearing a hat, it would have probably been a I'm right hat. We
Yeah.
love your St. John's hat. We love his Yankees. I love his Yankees hat. I know you don't, but let's
Yeah.
let's talk about.
Is that the hat David Wells threw the perfect game with when he was drunk? Is that the Babe Ruth hat?
I wish that would have been a lot of money. No, this is a little bit too crispy and new for that.
Amazing. So let's do a proper introduction here first, because for our guests who are following along on our YouTube channel, there's obviously a bookcase behind you. There are some framed pictures on the wall, kind of giving you a little insight right into your background. You see that picture up top. So we welcome on Dave Catalano to the show, and you are sports memorabilia guy, right? And again, Nick kind of alluded to you turned a hobby, right, into something that is kind of business-like. So, David, we welcome you to the show. How are you doing today? And are you ready to talk about your background?
Let's go. Yeah. Hey, Nick. Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me. This is fun. Yeah. I don't know if you just want me to kind of jump right into it.
Well, first I want to ask you because there's some people are saying different things here. Now, is your nickname Dave Cat or is it Big Cat? Because I've heard both.
Yeah, affectionately Big Cat, but
Okay.
Dave Cat was just sort of easy as part, half Dave from David and Catalano. So Dave Cat always
All
comes
right.
from that. So
So, Big Cat, we're going to talk about your business, obviously. I'm curious, what's the first app you check on your phone in the morning? Is it eBay to see if you're selling your things, or you're doing some other stuff when you turn your phone on?
it is eBay. I have
Oh
I have
boy.
weekly auctions, so it is eBay. Some delightfully surprised some days when I wake up in the morning and something was sold. So that's cool.
Uh,
We gotta connect you with one of our friends who is
well,
also
I
a
am
big fan.
I am now a valid eBayer as well.
Oh,
I've been
All
able
really?
to
right.
sell. Yeah, so a lot of my older jerseys that does like don't necessarily fit have kind of been good sellers and good movement for the last couple of months. So recently, the one that I was proud of was we're huge hockey fans, so I sold my Henrik Lundqvist Winter Classic jersey,
Oh, of course.
that cream one from 2012 when they played the Flyers, the Philadelphia Flyers at Citizens Bank.
Yeah.
So at the time, my mom probably spent $300 on that jersey. I ended up getting like 270 for it. So I
Wow.
basically got almost the full price back
So what about your
many
LaDainian
years after the fact.
Tomlinson jersey that you used to wear all the time?
That's that's long gone. The Sean Merriman jersey. I wish I never got rid of the Sean Merriman jersey.
Because you met
Imagine.
him.
And then we had him on the podcast. It sucks. But anyway, I'm also a valid eBayer, Dave. So our friend who is loosely connected to the show. He does some broadcasting with us, broadcast engineer work. His name is Joseph Foreman. He's been a valid eBayer for the longest time. He basically says that there's no other platform right there that's available that works as well or that is as useful as eBay. Do you find that to be the case?
I do, and I'm at shows every weekend. I'm at trade shows every weekend, and sometimes it's just easier to sell on eBay and more profitable. You're gonna pay the fees and what have you, but if I'm at a big show, like 2 weeks ago, I was at the Philly show. So obviously that was huge because the Eagles just won the Super Bowl, and Jalen Hurts was there signing, and old school guys like Shady McCoy and what have you. Some of the current guys, AJ Brown, Nick Sirianni, the coach. So like maybe 10,000 people passed by my table every day, and it was a 3-day show. And still, I sell. You get more eyes on your stuff on eBay every week. So the platform is just great. It's easier with the app. They just make it easier and easier. I've been doing eBay for, well, 12 years or so, but really since the pandemic is where I jumped on and used eBay to make a living. Yeah.
Very nice. All right. So let's talk a little bit, like I said, about your background. What did you study in particular, and where did you attend college?
I went to Kane University for a few semesters, and then went to New York Film Academy. I thought I was going to get into television. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster for a while, and then when I went to Kane, it wasn't. I realized that I liked behind the camera and the editing process and shot composition more than I liked being on camera and broadcasting. So there was some exercises that we had in one of our video classes, and one of them was to do a chase sequence. So I shot a chase sequence. We got a couple friends together, and it was like Indiana Jones. It was like a car chase with a foot chase, and it went through the woods and the highway and everything. And it was like really crazy and elaborate, but I just wanted to do a good job. Like it was like one of my first projects in college. And then we watched the videos in video class, and then like there was a girl who's like chasing her cat around the apartment. And I was just like, wow, mine's going to be pretty intense compared to what some of the other students are doing. And then they showed mine, and then it was just like complete silence. And the professor was like, this is the best video I've gotten in like my 8 years of teaching.
Wow.
And he talked to me about, you may want to try to pursue this. So I did. And I went to New York Film Academy. So dropped out of college, went to New York Film Academy. And my first thesis film that I did there was the highest tested film in the history of New York Film Academy, and it won
Wow.
a scholarship to the advanced level. So then I did a film at the advanced level, and then it was a short version of a feature film that I wrote. And then as soon as that was done, and I was added to Film Academy, I started teaching there, and my script got optioned. So things happened for me really, really fast in the film business. And I was meeting with some really great actors who thought my script was terrific and wanted to do my movie. Jean Reno and John Leguizamo and Keith
Wow.
David, Joe Vitarelli, and like all these, quality actors were like lined up that like wanted to like do my movie. So long story short, like after 2 years of trying to make it happen, it didn't work. And John Leguizamo became busy doing To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, and then he did Freak on Broadway. So I became this kind of, a story of a lot of Hollywood, writers, of just this guy with a script and no money and no actors, no finance, and nowhere to go. Like I'm out of film school. Am I going to go back to college? What do I do? And they said, why don't you just learn how professional filmmaking is done and work as a production assistant? So I started working as a PA, and it was the best times of my life. I worked on Sopranos and Sex and the City, and I did 2 Spider-Man movies.
Wow.
And like at that time, it was like booming in New York. Like New York was where everything was being shot. Like I worked on the original Thomas Crown Affair.
What about Law and Order?
Well, I did Law and Order Criminal Intent later on when I became an assistant director. So then, then that's what happens. And you work so long as a production assistant, you become an assistant director, you get paid 3.5 times the money. Like everything's different. You have like health insurance and
Hmm.
like this like pension plan and what have you. And you're
Those
like, wow,
unions
I'm
are
gonna
good.
it's good. It's good. And and I have a house and a Mercedes, and then you're like, life is good. And then you kind of forget why you're in the business, because you're just like the nuts and bolts guy, and you get caught like in like quintessential middle management.
Right.
So I got in that rut for a little while, and I wouldn't say rut. I was very blessed to be there. But I backed out. I backed out, and I started my own production company, and I started directing music videos. And I teamed up with a artist named Nick Javis, a hip hop artist, and we created a show called Rhyme Drill, which the NFL picked up, and it turned into the Pepsi Max NFL Audible, which was done with like Snoop Dogg and Talib Kweli and Lupe Fiasco and some of the great hip hop artists at the time. So I really established myself kind of on my own. And then I created the Smalls Family, which was based on the lyrics of Notorious Big. And that was like a real viral hit. I mean, it was like 35 million views. And this is before TikTok and before, I don't even think of Instagram was a thing. This was just like, we just put it on Facebook and
Yeah.
the thing exploded. World Star Hip Hop picked it up. I had an article written in Rolling Stone magazine about it, LA Weekly. Like it was insane. So then, my career in that direction started rolling until it wasn't anymore. And things just dried up. And I went back to being an assistant director. And then things got tough over COVID. I was out of work about 10 months during that period. And then I got into sports cards. I saw the marketplace just explode. It was a love of mine, as a kid into like my teens. Kind of got out of it, by like mid high school or whatever, and dipped back into it in 2003 because I know that was a big NBA draft class with LeBron and D Wade and Carmelo, and I wanted to get a lot of their stuff for back in 2003. But I just bought a lot of it and tucked it away. And then before you know it, you look up in 2020 and the marketplace is just insane.
Yeah,
And
so we want to discuss obviously your transition there, but before we do, just one more thing on the production world. So that girl, I mean, she was chasing the cat. She should have been chasing the Catalano as far as production is concerned to be in your world because you worked on some big shows with some big people. So me, of course, I'm the big food guy here. So I got to ask you, which shows had the best craft services?
Oh, it was easily Sopranos. I mean,
Not,
Sopranos is
it's not the
you
first
just
time we've heard that
Uh-huh.
specifically.
Joe, come on, man. You already know.
That's
How many
right.
Italians do you got to get into one place before everyone tries to outdo each other? So like it got to the point where it was like Jim Gandolfini was ordering a sushi chef to show up at the stage every Friday to treat the crew. So like he bought sushi for 200 people like every
Wow.
Friday. So like it was pretty nuts. And then Michael Imperioli or Stevie Van Zandt or Edie Falco or something, they'd order like the dessert truck. Remember the dessert truck from
Yeah,
East Village? They would have the dessert truck show up at our stages. So it was pretty insane. Yeah, I put on some pounds on that show.
that's awesome. And your production stuff. Obviously, you're at the memorabilia now, but do you still have your company? Do you miss doing the production stuff at all? Are you available if someone wanted to reach out to you to work on something with you? What's your status right now of production?
Totally, still want to do it. I actually finished a screenplay, a story that was in my head for years, and I was able to, during the actors and writers strike last year, I was able to finally complete that, and I'm just really really happy about it. So, I passed it around to a few people. I entered some screenplay competitions. There's nothing to speak about it yet, but totally still there. Have my ear to the pavement about some things that could potentially be happening. There's some interesting stuff happening in New Jersey. Netflix is building a stage down in Fort Myers.
Hmm.
So that's supposed to be this $500 million project. It's supposed to field like 6 or 8 TV shows at the same time. So there's a lot of productions coming to the Jersey Shore. There's some other facilities being built in I think Moonachie and Newark, Bayonne. So New Jersey has this incredible tax incentive that's going to drive productions here, but it's just really, really tough right now. And my gathering is that the biggest stars are the ones that are on TikTok right now. So it's like, it's not, I think the studios are a little leery in
That's
putting
why
up.
we need this TikTok ban to come back. Be much better, much better.
Right.
I know, and it's tough. It's tough when, you're going to put in, $20 million into this TV show and put in like these stars and whatever, and go through all of this like rigorous production when you don't really have the eyeballs because people are just picking up their phone and going on Instagram and going on TikTok. So it's a different world these days. Like, the independent movies, the small movies are just not being made like they were. They're not being embraced. The movies are just this experience that's like people want to go and they want their big super lounge chair and they want to be able to have a drink or have dinner or just like some, more high-end snacks like chicken fingers and whatever.
Mhm.
And they want to watch a big Marvel movie. They
Well,
want to
this is the
watch a
problem
big
with the
superhero.
movies, in my opinion, Dave. They're too
Yeah.
expensive for a family anymore. I'm not
Yes.
gonna go to the movies and drop $100 to sit there for an hour and 45 minutes. It's not worth it. I'm waiting now. You know, I waited, and as of this recording, this weekend, I've been waiting for months with my wife, my child. We'll watch Wicked on Peacock this week when it comes out. I wouldn't waste my time going to the theater and spending, $60 on tickets, $40 on popcorn and soda. It's not worth it anymore.
The
It's true.
movies used to be every other weekend was appointment viewing. Something was coming out
I always had to go to the
that
atrium
that
Friday night.
you felt like you needed to see in the movies. Now, how many movies a year do you see where you're like, I gotta go watch that physically on location in a movie theater?
Last movie I
Maybe
saw
one or
in
two.
theaters
It's
was Barbie. Got a gift card.
Yeah. 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 No, listen, I hear you. And I hear this from a lot of different people. And that's really the state. It's like where are the eyes going for entertainment? When you only have a certain amount of time because we're all busy
Mhm.
people, where are you going for entertainment? Well, I like my sports. So there's a certain amount of time that's going to be dedicated to that.
Yeah.
And and then you're going to go see like a kids movie if you have kids of that age that want to see a certain Snow White or whatever that could be coming out, and then it's just like, what else? You really have no time for anything else except when you get the chance, you want to do your on-demand favorite show on Peacock, on Netflix, on whatever the case may be. But
And even that, like, I don't want to sit down and watch Peacock and watch a 2 hour movie and make it take 2 hours and 30 minutes because of all the ads. It's
yeah,
just, I'd rather even wait till it goes on TV so I can DVR it and fast forward. That's how disinterested I am in watching a movie right now. And I don't
yeah,
have the time,
you're
really,
right.
to be honest with you.
You're right. You're right. So what do people do? They get their entertainment in little 10 and 15-minute intervals through TikTok or
Yeah.
5 second intervals, 1 minute intervals, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
So
but
that
you are right though, Dave, because like for me, like I'm interested still in like a superhero movie. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to see this new Superman movie. I've seen them all, so like I gotta see this one. So there is an aspect there to the big Hollywood blockbuster. But like the Oscars that just passed a little bit ago, like I didn't hear of any of those movies that were nominated.
I watched one.
and,
I pride myself on seeing at least one of the big Oscar movies, and it wasn't Wicked. So that's just the way of the
that's
world now.
that's one more than I did, and this is the first time in my life that I never watched the Oscars. I just
Uh,
didn't turn in for even 5 seconds. It's just
Yeah.
they're losing.
Yeah. Who do you think would
Hollywood
be
knows
who
that
do
they're
you think would
losing.
be a great Oscars host to revitalize the Oscars?
I don't even think it's the Oscars host that would be. I mean, I'd put Chappelle up there. Why not? Just throw Chappelle up there
Interesting.
and let him do let him do whatever he
I
wants.
mean, listen, Chris Rock worked, but I mean, it's very difficult because you're never going to find another Steve Martin or another Billy Crystal type who is legitimately a funny man. He's a respected man. He's somebody who's kind of got, the admiration of not only just like the Hollywood crowd, but just of a regular crowd too. Those types of people are kind of slowly going away.
Yeah, I'm just glad that after
It's
5 years they finally stopped going to Jimmy Kimmel again. The ratings are decreasing every year, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're Jimmy Kimmel back out there. We're on ABC. Like, we'll just you got to switch it up. You can't be going the same guy every year."
I agree. I agree with all that. I just don't think it's necessarily the host. I think it's Hollywood in general. And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I remember when The Hurricane came out and Gladiator came out in back-to-back years, and Russell won Best Actor for Gladiator, and it should have went to Denzel. And then like the next year, Russell did A Beautiful Mind, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, Russell's going to win for A Beautiful Mind," and then they gave it to Denzel for Training Day.
Yes.
They felt like
Yep.
he was robbed from. It was
Mhm.
rivalry. It was almost like, whoa, because there
Right.
were so many big actors doing so many really, really terrific high level films that weren't superhero films. So that was like an era where you just like there are 4 or 5 movies every year that are competing for multiple Oscars, and we actually know about them and really want to see them, so that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I also think it's weird that, some of these movies that are nominated, like they're not even in theaters. Like, oh, Amazon made this great thing. What was the one last year with the something, the flowers or something, moon, I don't know, the Scorsese movie or whatever, DiCaprio, but it was made on by Amazon. They put it in theaters. They lost like $200 million on it, but they were okay with it because they were getting a nomination. It's just like nobody's making these movies anymore for the right reasons.
And 6 or 8 years ago, people were so opposed to that. Steven Spielberg spoke openly. I think it was Spielberg who spoke openly about, hey, if your movie is not in the movie theater, you shouldn't be nominated for Best
Yeah.
Picture. Like
Yes, I agree with that.
so, but times to be a changing.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to Happy Gilmore 2 on Netflix. I'm glad it doesn't not in theaters, so I could just watch on Netflix.
Shot entirely in New Jersey.
How about that?
Happy Gilmore
So,
too.
of course, Sandler, a big sports fan. You, Dave, a big sports fan. So, talk to us. How did this hobby of yours really help your mental health as you're going through everything with the pandemic? And how did you, you know, decide, okay, this is the time for me to make a change career-wise?
Well, it was a really scary time for everybody, and it was really unsure times. So I looked back at, you had to take a really deep look at yourself and just be like, what am I good at?
Hmm.
If my industry is going to just completely shut down, what am I good at? What do I know? And you have to be really honest with yourself. And at first I was like, I'm a good carpenter. And I'm like, I'm not really a good carpenter. But I was just like, I'm really good at sports. Like, I think I really know sports. I could talk sports. And I think when paired kind of like head to head against somebody, whether it be like knowledge or whatever the case may be, I'm probably in all likelihood better than that person who sits across the table from me. So again, I recognize the sports card marketplace. It was therapeutic for me because just like a lot of people, when sports shut down and we missed sports, because sports completely shut down during that time, people were trying to get their sports fix. And a lot of gamblers that were just into gambling, just betting on games, got into sports cards because they had to put their money into sports somehow. So that's what really elevated the marketplace. So it really started for me, during the Black Lives Matter movement. I attached myself to a card that I thought would be significant for the time. And it was a 1973, 1974 Sure Fresh Bill Russell card. And it was, I wish I had one prepared. I'd show it to you, but you guys could probably cut to one. Um, so what's really significant about this card, it was a Sure Fresh was a bread company based in the Seattle area, and it used to come with like a little tab on it, like this, the little plastic tabs that pinch the bread. So then the card would be dangling off of that, and it was Bill Russell's only coaching card when he coached the Seattle Supersonics during that time. So not only the first black coach in NBA history, it was his only individual card, and it was very rare because it was only regionally produced, and there weren't a lot of them around in good condition. And I wind up finding one that I thought looked really good, and they only charged me like $120 for it. And then I sent it in, I got it graded. It came back a PSA 6, which was the highest grade in population. And again, on eBay, I marketed the card as just like I'm talking about. Bill Russell, here's the great Bill Russell
Hmm.
of 11 championships in 13 years, and this is his only coaching card, and the thing sold for $4,500,
Woo.
and that
Good
was
job.
like incredible markup on that thing. So
Right.
I went and I bought a few more. I was able to get my hands on a few more, and the next one sold for 3,000. I bought it for right around the same price, and then here I am with like barely a $300 investment and like over 7 grand, off of that. And I was like, I'm not only in the sports card business, I'm in the Sure Fresh Bill Russell business.
Yeah.
So,
So from there,
so
you saw like I can make a living out of this.
completely. I mean, it's just I was thriving. at that time, because I was thinking outside of the box and trying to find things that were going to be, I there's a saying that I used to say in my production company, that if you're not doing anything new, fresh, different, if you're not breaking any new ground, then why are you even doing it? Why are you just being a copycat? Are you just biting off of somebody's idea?
Right.
So
It's better to be a big cat than a copycat.
there you go. So, so I always try to bring something new, fresh, and different to everything that I do. And I want to break the mold. I want to break new ground, and I want to do something and really put my heart into it. And then, if I have egg in my face, then whatever. But at least I'm not just following trends. I'm a trendsetter, and a lot of times it's been, successful for me.
So there are multiple components to what you just said. Number one, it's the eBay algorithm, beating the eBay algorithm. So we mentioned our friend Joe before. He's claimed that he's beaten the algorithm. He's a master of it. Whether that's the case or not, I mean, I've seen him in action. So, but that's one component to it, which helps your business. But talking about now, we've done a podcast before. We were on our friend Tom Lavecchia's podcast, the New Theory podcast. We briefly had a little bit of a roundtable discussion regarding sports memorabilia. So we talked about, I guess, just the novelty of items, novelty items like that Bill Russell item. You would never imagine something like that would be as worth as much as you sold it for. But because it's regional, because it was a limited amount of makes, and because it's arguably the greatest winner in the history of professional basketball, that's what makes the card so expensive, right? So let's talk
Correct.
about, bringing everything together, creating iconic sports media, because, there is this process of, okay, which pieces, whether it's a jersey, whether it's a framed picture, whether it's an individual card, which pieces are worth targeting. Then there's the whole process of authenticating the item, right? Getting the certificate of authenticity, right? Making sure that the signature is not a forgery, making sure that everything kind of comes crystal clear with it. So in order to acquire the memorabilia stuff, it's a process, and it costs money, and it's an investment. And with some investments, you're going to get your investment back and you're going to make money. For some, not so much, right? So talk about creating iconic sports media and kind of the framework that goes into building a brand like that, that's in an industry that's ultra competitive.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's a lot there, but yeah, I'll start with iconic sports. I knew that, I wanted to, when I was going to venture into this full time, that again, with my motto of doing something new, different, breaking new ground. So it took me a long to kind of figure out, well, what I want to be, what I want to kind of go with it. And the word iconic always kept coming in my head, was like a buzzword. Here in my office, I have a lot of things going on, but I also have like lists on walls of like, things that like phrases, inspirational words, and things that always came to my head. And that was always something that word was always something that I always kind of centered on and kind of like brought myself back to. And I knew I didn't want to be like Catalano's sports cards. I didn't want to put my last name into it. I wanted to take myself out of it.
Hmm.
So a lot of things like the Ticket Bastard podcast, like they're just like, I've had people say, well, you're the star of your own show. And I'm like, I don't look at myself that way. I feel like I'm the shepherd to these stories. The star is the ticket. The star is the event, the
Yeah.
athlete,
And
the
you do a
thing.
great job, by the way, telling the
Do
stories of those tickets.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
everybody can
really
go
enjoy doing it.
check out your podcast. Where can they find your podcast?
It's the Ticket Bastard on YouTube. So yeah, you could just at this point you could just Google the Ticket Bastard, and I'll be popping up, and I'm at Iconic Sports on Instagram and the Ticket Bastard on TikTok. But again, with creating, that being the flagship series that I was creating from Iconic, is it was very important for me for it to embody the word iconic, like whatever series that I was doing. And I didn't want to do content. You know what I mean? I wanted to do a show. I want to do a series. I wanted to take my film background and I wanted to produce a show.
Right.
Like when you say, like if there's all this stuff that's in like a bucket. I don't know if I told you guys this before, but I love going by this little kind of rule of thumb. If there's all this stuff that's in a bucket, there's just all this kind of things, you just say, well, what is that? Well, it's the contents of a bucket. But if you just have the bucket in itself, you're just like, well, it's a bucket and it could hold a lot of different things, and it's like the possibilities are endless. We could put a bucket. So it's like, I don't want content. I want a series. I want something that is just sort of, it's well produced. It has, my film background, fingerprints all over it, like all of that stuff. But I also wanted something to be able to be iconic and to be able to grow and be able to be kind of versatile to a lot of different, audience.
Very nicely. As Nick mentioned, you do a good job. I've watched a bunch of your episodes. That's
Yeah, just
something
like
that for
smooth, like like quick 10 minutes, like
right.
easily digestible, and you get all the information you need.
Yeah. It's
Thank you.
something
It's so
incredibly
much.
efficient.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Nick. It's just so much fun for me. I really enjoy it. I get the butterflies going into it, and it's soft scripted, so obviously I got to put a story together. So that's really the tough part. I want to make sure that I put everything in there. I'm in
Wow.
the process right now of doing a Ricky Henderson tribute
Oof,
episode.
that should be great. And you know what? It's not easy. I can't talk to myself for 10 minutes. Joe could talk to himself for two
I could
hours,
talk to
but,
myself.
but I can't do that. I need to play off somebody. There you go. You're in there solo.
That's why we're so good together, because we play off each other so well.
But like I said, I just think of myself as, I'm not thinking of myself as like doing a monologue, or I don't think of myself as, being the star of the show. I think I'm a shepherd to the story. So when people approach me about the specific items that I have, that's the way I talk to them about my items. And I tell them stories about, and you let the thing breathe, you let the thing have life.
Yeah.
Because there is kind of it is a little time capsule, and it can tell you stories if you let it.
So let's talk about a piece of memorabilia or a ticket, right? It could be a jersey, a picture, like I mentioned, a card, uh, any specific event. What is a piece of memorabilia that you would like to acquire just to have on your own for your own purposes, not for the purposes of getting it authenticated or reselling it, or something that you would want for yourself that you think would have significance, a value, something that you would want to display, whether it's in behind you or somewhere in your man cave or your living room, wherever the hell you want to put it, for personal reasons.
Well, I've said this to a few different people. I think the most important sporting event ticket, maybe the most ever important sporting event ticket, was Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier. So Jackie Robinson's debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers it would be my holy grail, would be my absolute white whale. One came to auction recently and went for well over $500,000. But there's I think only 4 of them have been sold. You gotta understand, like during that time, it's just like so hard. People never thought to like keep this little piece of paper that they had to like walk in. Maybe some people did, but most people were just, they would lose it before they even got to their seat. So, and that's the valuable thing about tickets. It's like most people, a half hour into getting their ticket stub, it's already lost. It's lost by the time they got to the concession stand. They forgot what seat they're going to. The other part of the people throw it away as soon as they leave the arena, as soon as the game's over. And some people who want to keep it or maybe forget about it, leave it in their jeans, and their jeans go in the wash, and then it's destroyed and whatever. So after all that, it comes to about like, maybe there's 20% left, maybe there's 10% left, or it's a lot of times even less than that. So something like Jackie Robinson's debut, I mean, that's just incredible. Now you go to like Super Bowl tickets that are like really big in
Its
size.
tickets are now a lost art because everything is right on your phone and you scan it. But
Yeah.
there's a market for people who want physical ticket stubs. I went to the last game at Giants Stadium, the regular season game, and it was a Jets Bengals game, and I still have that ticket. I've been to the NFL draft a couple of times. I still have those tickets. I've been to WrestleManias. I still have those tickets. I bought physical tickets for all of them. And regardless, I'm never going to get money for them. But do I want to keep the ticket stubs? Absolutely. Do people want to keep
I'm
ticket
digging
stubs?
through here.
Absolutely.
I got a ticket. I'm gonna show you guys.
Okay.
I'm right
Keep
behind
going,
you.
keep
I'm right
going,
behind
Nick.
you. You
Oh,
guys keep
listen,
talking.
That they
I
all
was gonna
have
say
they
I'll
all have
talk.
value, Joe. They all have value.
Yeah, I was gonna say let me talk for 2 hours because we know Nick is gonna need the 2 hours. But yeah, no, there's again, like I said, there's a market for people who want physical ticket stubs, but it goes beyond that. People like I went to one of the Stadium Series games back in 2014 when I was in college. The Rangers played two games in Yankee Stadium, the Devils game and the Islanders game. I had the Rangers Islanders ticket, and for the life of me, I don't know what happened to that ticket stub. It was it was a really well made ticket stub, and it was something that I wanted to keep, and it got lost into the abyss, and it's something that I still bring up today. I wish I had it, and we got Nick. Let's go.
Here's my
Yeah.
ticket. Joe should have the same thing. Now, this ticket was
I know
rare
what this is.
because this ticket was from 2022, and at that time it was digital only. But we bought the ticket so late at the box office that we got the ticket, and here it is, Antonio Brown's last game in the NFL
Oh my
as he
Right,
walks
goodness.
off the field.
So that was the walk off when he
and
walked
I
up, like gestured to the crowd and all that. Yeah,
and
Yep.
what we did was, I don't know if I should be sharing this, but we bought tickets for higher up, and we figured out a way to get down,
sure.
and we
Yeah, the
sat
Jets
Everybody does
right,
suck,
it.
so
and
you're
we
gonna go
sat
first, second row.
right behind the Buccaneers bench as he just starts taking his equipment off, and we were like, "What the is going on?" And it was great. It was awesome.
Very memorable, and
Amazing.
I love tickets like that has this sort of memorable occasion. There are a lot of people that keep World Series tickets and Super Bowl tickets and what have you, but it's like those obscure games are really really cool. I did an episode on John Montefusco. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing his name, and I did that in the episode. John Montefusco came in his first major league game. He recorded all 27 outs, but he came in relief. So a
Wow.
pitcher, a pitcher gave up like 4 runs. Uh, Pitcher's name, I'm losing it right now. Just had it. But the pitcher gave up 4 runs. He was coming off of an injury and they didn't know if he could go. So they brought up John Montefusco from the minor leagues. And he apparently had like a hangover or whatever. He just got off the bus and had long hair. And it was 1976. And he was just like, whatever. The pitcher gave up 4 runs without recording an out. So Montefusco comes in and pitches technically a complete game because he recorded all 27 outs, but it wasn't, a complete game because he didn't start the game. And his first at bat, he drew a walk because, pitchers would have to bat in the National League, even at that time. And then his second at bat, he hit a home run. So that was his first official at bat. So this guy came in and had 27 outs, which is technically a complete game, and then hit a home run in his first at bat, which was technically his second at bat. But when you draw a walk, it doesn't record as an at bat. So, and that was John Montefusco is his major league debut, which is probably the greatest major league debut in history. Yeah, it was incredible.
Pretty impressive. Pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
so finding those kind of tickets and finding those kind of
Yeah.
games and then getting the athlete to sign and having a conversation with them, that's just gold to me. It's absolute
Yeah.
gold.
That's very impressive. What you do is impressive, and it was an impressive debut if you hear on You Know I'm Right. So, Dave, in your life or your careers, what would you say is your You Know I'm Right moment? What I mean by that, it's a time or place where you wanted to pursue something, you asked somebody for advice, they said, Dave, don't do that. What are you crazy? That's not going to work out. And you were like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And in the end, you will see why it is that I'm right about this. And I can tell you, I told you so.
I mean, when I was going into the film business and my uncle gave me a famous line where he said, be prepared to sell pencils for a living. And I didn't know what he meant at the time, but he was just like, you're going to be broke and you're going to have to go get another job and you're going to go, and he's just like this old school Italian guy. And I guess that's what they used to do back then. They used to sell pencils. So he said, be prepared to sell pencils for a living. I never sold pencils, by the way. So it worked out pretty good.
Well, I'd say so. Dave, we appreciate your time. Again, this was an excellent debut. We love talking about your film background, your production background. Obviously, the sports memorabilia stuff, the sports stuff is right up Nick and I, our alleys. So, once again, where can we find you? And what we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So, if there's anything else you would personally like to share or promote for yourself or something you haven't touched on, by all means, go ahead. But this was a lot of fun. We're gonna probably see you again in person sometime really soon. And who knows? I think the gears are turning as the episode is going on. So I definitely think there's more room here moving forward for the three of us to kind of do stuff and collaborate and work together. But once again, thank you. Thanks again for joining us, Dave.
Thanks. Thanks for those nice words. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me. It's Iconic Sports Media, just mostly known as Iconic Sports. And it's the Ticket Bastard podcast web series that you can find on YouTube, and it's the only show that features sporting event tickets and the fascinating stories that go behind them. And it's my story in acquiring the ticket, and it's the athlete's story, and it's the story of the event and all what have you, all kind of encompassed into like one episode. And Lawrence Taylor gave me the nickname the Ticket Bastard because I always had him sign tickets for me. And then one day when he saw me, he goes, "There you go, the Ticket Master." And I didn't quite hear him right. And I said, "Did you just call me the Ticket Bastard?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's you, the Ticket Bastard." So then OJ Anderson started calling me the Ticket Bastard, and he got a really kick out of it. So, if I know one thing in life, I know that if Lawrence Taylor gives you a nickname, you got to stick with it. So the show is called the Ticket Bastard because of LT. So check it out. Thanks for having me, guys. This was a heck of a lot of fun.
Dave, thank you for your time. That's going to do it here for this episode of I'm Right. For our special guests, Carrie Berk, and of course, Big Cat himself, Dave Catalano, and my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and thank you for watching. I'm right.